Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Sun's about to set, but it's been dark and gloomy all day, or at least most of the afternoon, because of this little drizzly rain. Nothing bad, but man, it's felt like it's sunset since about noon. I want to take a little break from all the political news talk because I think everyone's probably getting kind of overloaded on that. I mean, there's certainly things in the news that could potentially newsworthy. Some excitement on the right. Matt Gaetz was announced to be the position for Attorney General, and Tulsi Gabbard has been announced to be the Director of National Intelligence. I don't know how you feel about that one. A few other important ones, I guess. I'll admit, it's a lot of that looks good. We'll just have to wait and see. I wanted, though, to shift gears to actual prepping stuff. I know, that's shocking. Some of you, you complain all the time. There's not enough actual prepping stuff. But then when I put out a prepping video, no one watches it. Oh, well. In light of the recent natural disasters here that we've gone through, and the flooding over in North, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and wildfires and stuff like that, I wanted to talk about some of the specific things that you should probably make sure that you have on hand. Now, a lot of this stuff is somewhat common knowledge or basic stuff, but it doesn't hurt to go over it, because I find with myself and with others around me that I talk to, when you start off kind of on that homestead preparedness journey, you try to cover the basics in the beginning, right? And then years down the road, as you're doing this, you're focused on all this advanced stuff, and you haven't really paid much attention to that basic stuff. And maybe you've used some of it, maybe it's expired, maybe you've realized you didn't get enough, whatever it is. And so from time to time, it's always good to go back to the basics and kind of look at that. So some of this will sound somewhat basic. When you're dealing with, let's start off with the floods, because the weather changes and all that. Yesterday, speaking of that, myself and half a dozen of the people in our little group, we're all texting each other the crazy amount of chemtrails in the sky yesterday. I mean, and it's funny because today it's just dark and gloomy and drizzly and everything, but it was insane, the amount. The whole sky, I mean, just anywhere you look, it was just covered. But anyways, try not to go into that much of a conspiracy there. We know that the weather patterns are changing. Some people call it man-made global warming. I mean, man-made, yeah. I mean, if you count all the stuff in the sky. But then there's also, I think, just general, natural, cyclical changes in the weather. Anyways, flooding has become a real issue. It's to the extremes. You have to understand, a lot of people think that it's only going to be wet, or it's only going to be dry, or it's only going to be hot in the summer and cool in the winter. But it's to the extremes on every front. So in the wintertime, it's going to be potentially extra cold. Summertime, extra hot. Periods of drought and dry and fires, and then periods of flooding, rain, and storms, and all the other stuff in between. So in dealing with flooding, that's a tough one. A lot of people, it amazes me, since we had the big flooding here recently, and talking to locals around it amazes me how many people just don't understand that water in itself is like the most powerful force on this planet. When flood waters rise and they're moving fast, there's really nothing that can stop them. The damage that I've seen around here, the damage that was seen in North, South Carolina, Tennessee, and then other times of major flooding, it's astronomical what water can do. And sometimes we're not talking like, 10, 12, 15, 20 feet. Sometimes it's just a couple of feet, and it can do just massive amounts of damage. So when it comes to flooding, there's only so much you can do to actually protect yourself from the water getting to your house or your stuff. Have your home and stuff on higher ground if possible. Sandbags, There are other devices now, inflatable devices and stuff that you can put around your house. That's kind of common sense, common knowledge. It doesn't hurt to have some sandbags available. And even if you don't have sand, if you have dirt, garden dirt, something to put in them, it's better than nothing. If you have, a tractor or something to build a type of berm or dike around certain things, that's also, these are tricks of the trade that farmers have used for forever. Okay, so that's nothing new, but it may be new to you if you're new to living out like this and homesteading and all that kind of stuff. So you need to kind of brush up on that. But as far as other things, when that kind of stuff happens, it can cause just pretty much a shutdown of everything. You all have seen it a lot in videos and stories over in the Appalachians, but it happened here too, just not as big and widespread, and didn't last as long. But power outages, electricity goes out, and when electricity goes out, it doesn't just mean that you don't have electricity. It means most places don't have electricity. Gas stations, they can't pump fuel. So if you think, well, if we lose electricity, I got this generator I'll hook up. Do you have enough fuel to run it? Gasoline generators suck a lot of fuel, okay? Depending on the generator, you can expect to go through potentially 5 gallons in an 8-hour period. That's a lot of fuel. Water. Water goes out. You think, well, you've got so much water, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. With here and in the Appalachians, the floodwaters washed away so much of the ground underneath that it was getting down to water pipe mains and busting them, and large portions of our area had no water for several days. So you should probably have a plan on water. I've said since the beginning that water is very critical, and you better have a plan for water. Fuel, water, power, those are big things. And you not just have a plan for the water, but plan to purify it, because if you're planning on getting surface water, right? Maybe you have a creek like back here, or you have a pond or something like that. When it's flooding, that water can become much more contaminated. This creek that you see me stand around a lot, that's a spring-fed creek. The spring head is just a few hundred yards away, and typically it's very, very clean water. But when it's flooding, you have all the runoff, and you don't know what's in it. You have people that have surface, goodness, my mind just went blank. I apologize. Toilets. It was just went blank. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. But you have runoff from that. You have runoff from the cow fields. You have garbage. All these things, which makes the creek water, at least for a while, much more contaminated. I mean, it's like drinking swamp water. So it's going to be much more difficult on your filters to filter that out. You're going to go through filters a lot faster and clog them up. So you have to figure that kind of stuff. So having stored water is going to be very important. Other things, not being able to actually get out. Now, some of you might say lagoon. That's what it was. I kept wanting to say latrine. I don't know what happened to my brain. I'm getting old. Lagoon, which some of you don't know what that is. It's like a little mini pond where your toilet stuff pumps into instead of a septic underground. Getting out. That's always a big problem. That was a big problem over in the North South Carolina area. It was a big problem here. People could not get out. Roads completely washed away. There's still roads that are completely washed away. I spoke with the road manager guy in our area this morning, and he said at the best case scenario, it'll be 6 to 8 weeks before they get the roads even in a decent. He said, we're not talking like rebuilding, just all to know that all the roads are in place where people can get through. We have bridges that are completely out. The bridges that are out that may take months to rebuild. And so where you're at, you may not actually be able to leave your property, and you may not be able to get help into your property. And if something happens, maybe it's a medical emergency, ambulance can't get there. That happened here, and I know that happened over in Appalachian Mountain area. Ambulance can't get here during that time. And if it's still storming, which is what was happening here for a good period, for several hours, the weather was still bad enough that you couldn't fly in a helicopter either. So you were stranded. If someone on your property, you or someone else, has a heart attack, you're on your own. Stroke, you're on your own. Goes into shock, you're on your own. Major laceration, burns, head trauma, other types of trauma, blunt force trauma from stuff. We had several reports, and we were trying our best to keep up on them, of people, trying to clear debris out of their driveway, or, a tree limb that fell on their head, and, nothing too serious, but there was a lot of injuries, and they couldn't get out, couldn't get an ambulance in. They're stranded. These are things that the average American doesn't have to deal with. They don't understand it because they're used to everything being instant. You walk in your house, you flip your light switch, and the light comes on. You just expect it to. An emergency happens, you call 911, in a few minutes, someone's there. This is the big thing in prepping that a lot of people don't understand, that whether it's temporary or long-term, there will come a time that kind of stuff doesn't exist. Grocery stores, no power, don't work. So you better have medical on hand. Food, and you need to have food in a way that you may not have to be able to cook it, that you don't have to cook it. Like I said, you could be without power. And if you don't have either propane or wood that you can heat food and cook food, what are you going to do? Now, I know most of you good little preppers, you have multiples on how to heat and how to cook. But I'm just letting you know, it may not happen. And in flooding, because we've had this happen. We've had trees fall down on top of, in storms and flooding and storms, we have trees fall down on propane tanks. And now you don't have propane. We've had them actually float away. So, you have to think about these kinds of things. Just being potentially isolated in these storms. Look at wildfires. That's another force that can be very difficult to stop, especially when they really get going. And you may need to evacuate. But if you don't evacuate in time, then you're cut off. And then what are you going to do? It's possible things could just burn to the ground. So, do you have maybe an underground shelter or something that you can go to get out of that? That's one of those ones you better move ahead of time and get out, because if it's too late, your exit route may be cut off and you're done. And then you could lose everything in floods and fires and earthquakes. And so, or at least a lot of stuff. So do you have backups for your stuff? Do you have things moved around? Do you have them in potentially secure areas, more secure? Maybe have stuff in your house, stuff in your barn, or wherever, a shop or something. And then maybe you have another place that's higher ground, and you have a cache there of stuff. Maybe it's a cinder block building, something that doesn't burn, something it's in a place that you don't have to worry about floods and things like that. Having contingencies of your plan are going to be critical. Vehicles, even around here, where pretty much everyone has at least one four-wheel drive vehicle. When water gets high and when roads wash away, even some of the better four-wheel drive vehicles don't function. When people try to get out, they get stuck. Their vehicles take on too much water. The road washes away underneath. A lot of times you don't realize, even if you walk out kind of testing, like, oh, there's only 12 inches of water on the road. My big old four-wheel drive pickup can handle that. A lot of times on the gravel roads, the road surface may not be, may only be 10, 12 inches underwater, but you don't realize that it's loosened up that road surface so much that when you go through it, you may sink or it may wash away and slide. We had someone just this week that happened. Vehicle slid off and had to help them get out. These are kinds of things that are typical in living out in the country, but considering the more extreme factors that we're dealing with weather and various extremes, even if it's not weather, if it's like non-natural things, like chemical leaks and explosions and terrorist attacks, these things are becoming more likely. And I know I talked about the disaster stuff just the other day also, but I really think that we need to be paying a lot of attention to this, because we've watched natural disasters increase, we've watched non-natural disasters increase, and we're in a time now where, Trump and all his people are in power, or will be soon, and just about the only thing left that the far left has is to do these kinds of things, is to do types of acts that could cause disruptions. And I'm not saying they will happen, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if they happen. And so it may not always be putting your body armor on and, you know, strapping on your rifle and defending your property from invaders. I mean, that could happen too. A lot of times it can just be the things that you're used to function and to live and to survive, thrive, they're gone away. Could be for a little while, it could be for a long while. Phones could be down, power could be out, water's gone, you know, emergency service is gone, food, gasoline, all these types of things could just be gone. And you're on your own. A lot of people here were on their own for a while. A lot of people in North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, they were on their own for a while. A lot of people in other types of disasters, other hurricanes and earthquakes and floods and fires, they're on their own for a while. And you need to have a plan on how you're going to make it when you're in that place. Because it can be a scary place. When you're watching water rise and you don't know how far it's going to get. When you see the wildfire come in your direction, you don't know how close. When there's earthquakes, you don't know exactly how severe they're going to be. Other things. And we have to be prepared for that, because those are the ones that's typically going to bite you in the hind end. Because a lot of those things that I just mentioned, they come with very, very little warning. And it's easy to get caught off guard. So be planning for this kind of stuff. Go over, I tell you all the time, whenever these events, whether they're natural or non-natural, occur, that those are learning events. If you're not caught up in them, you need to pay attention to what happens, how the people react to them, how the local officials react to them, how the big government reacts to them, and get an idea of how you're going to prepare for it if something like that happens in your area. And based on the stuff that's been going on, you really need to be prepared, because you certainly aren't going to be able to depend on government, whether it's local, state, or federal. That's been shown pretty clearly over the last few years, that they're not a reliable source to help you with. So get ready, folks. Get your plans made and get your houses in order and prepare mentally, physically, spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.